The moment the doors closed, passengers felt it. An uneasy silence, a strange smell, and a flight attendant acting wrong. No one knew what was happening, but everyone sensed one thing: something was seriously off. And just 30 seconds later, the entire plane exploded into chaos. The plane smelled strange the moment Flight 729 opened its doors. Not the usual scent of coffee, recycled air, or freshly cleaned seats. This smell was sharper, metallic, like cold steel mixed with something burnt. Most passengers didn't notice it at first, until the quiet woman in row 18 wrinkled her nose and whispered to her husband, "Do you smell that? Something off." Even before anyone stepped inside, the crew seemed unusually tense. The captain, normally smiling as he greeted people boarding, stood rigid beside the cockpit door, eyes darting back and forth like he was scanning every single face. He barely returned greetings. He didn't even blink when a child waved excitedly at him. His jaw was tight, his hands tighter. Something wasn't right. But the strangest of all was flight attendant Marin. Marin, usually the calm, polished, perfectly collected face of the airline, moved with stiff, jerky motions, as if she was forcing her body to obey. She kept tugging at her uniform sleeve, checking something underneath, a tiny bulge pressing against her wrist. She clicked her tongue nervously. Her eyes were red like she hadn't slept all night. She kept glancing over her shoulder, flinching at the slightest sound, scanning the aisle as if expecting someone or something to appear. Passengers exchanged looks. No one said anything out loud, but almost everyone felt the same thing burn through their chest. Something was seriously wrong with this flight. The cabin lights flickered once, just once, but long enough for several people to gasp. The elderly man in row 7 crossed himself. The businessman in 12C looked up from his laptop, brows lowered. A toddler started crying the moment the lights came back on, as if sensing fear before the adults did. Marin forced a smile, but her hands trembled. "Just a minor power fluctuation," she said, voice cracking. "Happens sometimes during boarding, nothing to worry about." But the way she practically sprinted to the galley, after saying it, made everyone worry more. A woman in row 3 stood up and lowered her voice to her husband. "Did you see that? She's terrified of something." Her husband nodded. "Yeah, and I don't think it's the lights." Meanwhile, the group seated in the back, a trio of college students heading to a weekend getaway, were whispering intensely. "Bro, this is giving disaster movie vibes," one muttered. "Dude, shut up," the girl beside him hissed. "You're making it worse." But even she kept glancing toward the front, eyes wide. As passengers settled in, small details kept piling up, small but unmistakably strange. The plane was unusually cold. The overhead fans hummed louder than normal, like they were working overtime. A faint beeping kept echoing from somewhere up front, not the pleasant chimes of boarding, but a slower, deeper warning tone. And then came the second weird thing. A man in a charcoal gray suit boarded last, escorted by an airline manager. The manager whispered something into his ear urgently before handing him a sealed black envelope. The man nodded once, slipped the envelope into his jacket, and walked directly to seat 4A. He didn't look around. He didn't speak. He just gripped the armrest with white knuckles and stared straight ahead, breathing fast and shallow. The moment he sat, Marin froze. Her face went pale. She looked at him like she had seen a ghost. The man avoided her eyes. Passengers around them felt the tension instantly, a silent electric jolt that filled the air. One woman leaned closer to her friend and whispered, "Do they know each other?" But the look Marin gave him didn't feel like recognition. It felt like dread. Minutes passed. More flickering lights. More strange smells. More nervous glances between strangers who had never spoken before. By the time the doors were about to close, multiple passengers were uncomfortable enough that they kept shifting in their seats, adjusting belts, checking their phones even though they knew Wi-Fi hadn't activated yet. The air felt heavy, like pressure building before a storm. And then the third strange thing happened. A loud thud, like something heavy dropped inside the overhead compartment, echoed through the cabin. Everyone went silent. Marin reacted instantly. She rushed toward the back, practically running down the aisle. But before she reached the source of the noise, she stopped suddenly because she wasn't alone. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, was already standing on her seat, pointing at the overhead bin. "There's something moving in there," she cried, voice trembling. Her mother pulled her down quickly, shushing her, embarrassed. "Honey, stop it, there's nothing inside. Luggage doesn't move by itself." But the girl wasn't convinced. "No, I saw it, the bag shook." Passengers stared at the bin. Some laughed nervously, others didn't laugh at all. A young man got up and gently pressed on the compartment door. "It's probably just a loose bag," he said. But the moment his fingers touched the latch, something thumped again from inside. He jerked his hand back instantly. A murmur spread through the cabin like wildfire, people whispering, people shifting, people peeking up at the overhead bin with growing unease. "What was that? Did you hear it? Is something alive in there?" The captain suddenly appeared from the cockpit, which almost never happened during boarding. His face was pale, sweat on his forehead, his voice barely steady. "Everyone, please remain seated. We're handling a technical issue." Technical issue? From the overhead bin. Passengers exchanged looks. No one believed him. Then something even stranger happened. The man in seat 4A, the one with the envelope, stood up abruptly and walked toward the overhead bin at the back. Marin blocked his path instantly. "You can't be here," she whispered fiercely. "I need to check it," he replied. "No," she hissed, gripping his arm. "You know what's in there, you can't open it." Passengers heard this. Passengers froze. Passengers stared. What did she mean? What was in the bin? And how did they know? The girl in row 18 whispered, "See, I told you something fishy was going on." Another thud sounded. Then another. Harder. Faster. Whatever was inside that overhead compartment, it wasn't just shifting. It was struggling. Marin backed away, shaking. Passengers held their breath. A woman near the bin finally whispered what everyone else was thinking. "Is there someone in there?" Silence. Eyes widened. Heartbeats thundered. And in that heavy, terrifying silence, the overhead bin shook. One last time. The entire plane stiffened as every passenger realized the same terrifying truth at the same exact moment. Something or someone was trapped inside. And that's when the chaos began. The overhead bin rattled violently, so loud it echoed through the cabin like a heartbeat gone wild. A woman screamed. Someone shouted for help. And then, bang! The compartment door snapped open. A black duffel bag tumbled out, hitting the aisle with a heavy thud. Passengers flinched back, gasping, clutching their seats. But what made everyone go silent wasn't the bag. It was the movement inside it. The zipper twitched. Something pushed against the fabric from the inside, hard. "What the hell?" a man whispered, voice shaking. Marin froze, hands covering her mouth. "No, no, it's too soon." The man from 4A stepped forward, face pale, eyes locked on the bag. "It's waking up," he muttered. Passengers backed away. A mother shielded her child. The cabin filled with cries, whispers, frantic breaths. Someone shouted, "What's in the bag?" The man didn't answer. Because suddenly, the zipper ripped by itself. The bag split open. And out rolled. Not a person. Not an animal. But a small metal device, blinking red, wires wrapped around it like veins. A cold silence swallowed the entire plane. "Is that Is it a bomb? Oh my God. Call security. Marin's voice was barely a whisper. It wasn't supposed to activate, not yet. The captain sprinted down the aisle. His voice boomed, firm and commanding despite the terror in his eyes. Nobody move. But it was too late. Because the device began to beep. Slowly, deeply, rhythmically. The kind of beeping everyone recognized from movies, the kind that meant danger. Passengers panicked instantly. People stood, pushing toward the exits despite the door still being closed. Others crouched, covering their heads. Someone fainted. A man tried to call 911 even though he had no signal. The entire cabin broke into absolute chaos. The captain grabbed the man in 4A by the collar. "You told us it was stable." The man snapped back. "It was. Someone tampered with it. Look at the wires." Passengers heard every word. Their screams grew louder. Marin stumbled back, gripping a seat for support. "No, no, this isn't right. She said we'd have time. She promised me." "Who?" a passenger yelled. "Who promised you?" Marin stared blankly, shaking violently. "I call." The device beeped faster. People cried, others prayed. A man punched the window as if he could break it. A teenage boy held his mother as she sobbed uncontrollably. The captain pressed the intercom button, voice cracking. "Brace for." He didn't finish. Because the device suddenly stopped beeping. And became silent. Too silent. A stillness swallowed the plane, so thick it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Passengers stared at the device. The captain didn't blink. Even the toddler who'd been crying earlier was perfectly silent now. After 5 seconds of unbearable tension, the man in 4A whispered, "That's not a bomb." Everyone turned to him. His voice trembled. "It's a tracker." "A what?" People looked confused, scared, angry. "What does that mean? Why is it on the plane? What was moving inside it?" The man knelt beside the device and carefully lifted it. Something was taped underneath, a tiny sealed capsule. He peeled it open. Inside was a folded photograph. He froze. His breathing stopped. Passengers leaned forward, horrified, curious, terrified. "What is it?" someone asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned the photo around. It showed Marin, smiling, standing with another woman. A woman with the same uniform and the same wrist bulge Marin had been hiding. Passengers gasped. "What is this? Who is she? Why is this on the plane?" Marin stepped back against the wall, eyes wide, face drained of all color. She wasn't supposed to be here," she whispered. "She told me she'd be on this flight instead." The man's voice hardened. "She set you up." The captain stepped closer. "Marin, what did you two do?" Marin broke down, choking on her own breath. "She said it was a test for internal security, that we'd get a bonus if we followed instructions. I didn't know she planted this." The man grabbed her wrist and ripped up her sleeve. Another device. A matching one. Red light blinking. Faster. Passengers screamed and scrambled into the aisles again. The captain roared. "Everyone down now. Brace POSITIONS." But then, another sound rose above the panic. A steady pound. From beneath the floor. Thump, thump, thump. Passengers froze mid-scream. Someone whispered shakily, "Please tell me that's not another one." The man in 4A looked at the captain. The captain looked at Marin. Marin shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, no, that's not a device." The pounding grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. The floor vibrated. And Marin whispered the last thing anyone wanted to hear. "There's someone in the cargo hold." The pounding beneath the floor grew stronger, not random, not accidental. It was rhythmic, desperate, like someone fighting their way out. Passengers clung to their seats, frozen in horror. A young man choked out. Someone's trapped under us." Marin shook her head violently, backing into the galley like she wanted to disappear. "No, no," she said, "the cargo hold would be empty. She said nobody would be down there today." The captain's voice dropped to a harsh, trembling whisper. "Marin, who is she?" Marin covered her ears as if the question hurt. I didn't know, I didn't think she'd actually." Thump it, thump it, thump it. This time the floor shuddered. People screamed. A woman jumped into her husband's arms. Others climbed onto seats to avoid the vibrating floor as if that would help. The man from 4A, now visibly terrified, crouched, pressing his ear to the ground. His face went pale. "That's not one person," he whispered. "That's more than one." A ripple of horror went through the cabin. In the corner, a teenager cried. Why would there be people in the cargo hold? Before anyone could answer. Screech. A metal shriek tore through the plane, echoing like the hull was being ripped open from the inside. Passengers clamped their hands over their ears, wincing. Some fell to their knees. A baby erupted in terrified cries. The captain snapped into survival mode. "We're opening the cockpit. Everyone stay back." But the man in 4A blocked him. "No, you can't open it, not yet." The captain glared. "And why not? We need to alert ground." "Because if you open that door," the man hissed, "you'll trigger the secondary failsafe." The entire cabin went dead silent. "What failsafe?" someone whispered. The man lifted the device from the spilled duffel bag, holding it by the edges, like it was toxic. "This wasn't planted to explode," he said. "It was planted to warn them." Them. The word landed like a punch. Maria, the woman in row 3, whispered shakily. "Warn who?" The man swallowed. "The people in the cargo hold." Passengers gasped. A wave of panic rolled through the plane. People yelling, people crying, people trying to climb over seats. A full-blown meltdown. Thump it, thump it, thump thump thump. Something or someone started pounding faster, harder, angrier. The captain lunged toward Marin, grabbing her shoulders. "Marin, tell us what is going on now." Marin finally broke. Her voice came out in a cracked whisper. She said we'd be running a test, that we'd hide a package and she'd check if security caught it. I thought it was for training." The captain shook her. "What was her name?" Marin sobbed. She called herself Agent Rook." The man in 4A's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Rook vanished 3 months ago." Passengers looked back and forth between them in terror. "Who is she? What does she want? Are we gonna die?" Before anyone could answer. Boom! The floor directly beneath row 22 buckled upward. A massive dent punched into the carpet from below. A woman fainted instantly. Someone screamed. "They're coming through." The captain shouted over the chaos. Everyone moved to the front of the plane. Bodies rushed forward, people tripping, pushing, grabbing their children, shoving luggage aside. The cabin devolved into pure survival. Another blow struck the underside of the plane. The dent grew. Metal groaned. It sounded like a hull breach waiting to happen. The man in 4A pressed a button on the blinking device, and the lights flickered violently. The plane jerked to one side as something overloaded. Marin screamed. "What did you do?" He didn't answer. He grabbed the captain's arm. "Divert power to the upper deck. We can trap them down there." The captain hesitated. Trap WHO, who is in my aircraft? The man finally spit out the truth. They're not passengers, they're not crew. He pointed at the torn duffel bag. They were smuggled onto this flight. Passengers gasped again. A woman shrieked. For what? Why? The man's face hardened. For takeover. A horrific silence followed. Everyone stared at him. What do you mean, takeover? He didn't get to answer. Because at that exact moment, the floor split open. Carpet tore, metal bent, screws shot upward. A hand, no, several hands stretched up through the opening. Pulling, clawing, grabbing the floor. Passengers screamed so loudly, the entire plane vibrated with fear. A voice rose from the darkness below. Open the door. Another hand emerged. Then another. Then a face. Covered, masked. Black tactical gear. Silent, expressionless. There were at least 3 of them. Maybe more. Passengers shoved themselves against the front wall, crying, shaking, begging for help. The captain backed away slowly. Marin, what did she get you into? Marin sobbed uncontrollably. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She lied. She lied about everything. Thump. Thump. C-R-A-A-C-K. The floor split wider. One of the masked intruders pulled himself halfway into the cabin. Passengers screamed. And the man in 4A whispered. They're here for someone on this flight. The words hit the cabin like a bomb. Passengers stared at the man in 4A, breath shaking, mind spiraling. Someone choked out. Who are they here for? The masked intruder dragged himself further into the cabin, gloved fingers tightening on the torn metal floor. His head lifted slowly, scanning the plane not chaotically, but with chilling precision, like he already knew exactly where to look. The captain stepped forward, voice shaking but authoritative. Stand down, identify yourselves. This is a commercial aircraft. The intruder tilted his head. Silence. Then in a low, distorted voice. Seat 4A. Passengers gasped. Everyone turned toward the man in 4A, the one holding the device, the one who'd recognized the tracker, the one who clearly wasn't just another traveler. He stepped back instinctively, breathing hard. No, I wasn't supposed to be on this flight. They were supposed to intercept me on the ground. They weren't supposed to. He stopped, because the masked intruder reached into his belt and pulled out a sleek black dart gun, aiming straight at him. Target acquired, the intruder said. Screams exploded again. The captain grabbed the man, shoving him behind a row of seats. You're not dying on my aircraft. The intruder fired. The dart grazed the seat, embedding in the headrest inches from a woman's face. She screamed, covering her eyes. 2 more intruders climbed up through the torn floor, each armed, each moving with terrifying calm. They weren't panicking. They weren't rushing. They were trained. And they came prepared. Passengers scrambled backward, pressing themselves against the front galley, shaking uncontrollably. The man in 4A yelled. You don't understand. There are more of them below. More, a teenage boy cried. How many? The man's jaw clenched. Enough to take this plane. Before anyone could respond. Bang! A bullet tore through the metal from below, a warning shot. The whole plane jerked as the impact rattled the undercarriage. The lights flickered. The engines hummed louder. The oxygen masks quivered in their compartments. The intruders climbed higher. One of them pointed directly at the man in 4A again. You cannot escape, Agent Hale. Agent. Passengers froze. He wasn't just a random suit. He wasn't just a stressed traveler. He was an operative. The captain stared at him in disbelief. Your government. Hale didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everything, the envelope, the nerves, the tracker, the fear, suddenly made sense. The intruders weren't here for the passengers. They were here for him. Marin sank to the floor, trembling. She lied, she lied, she lied. She told me it was a test. Hale grabbed her collar, desperation in his eyes. Rook isn't an agent anymore, he hissed. She defected, she went rogue, and you helped her without knowing it. Marin sobbed uncontrollably, hands trembling so badly she couldn't even wipe her tears. Hale turned to the captain. We need to seal the cockpit. Now, they can't reach the controls. Before they could move, the masked intruder pointed at the cockpit door. Open it. The captain stiffened. I won't. The intruder raised the dart gun at a trembling woman shielding her child. Open it, or she dies first. The plane erupted into cries. Please don't. Someone help her. Stop, stop, stop. The captain's voice cracked. You won't shoot a civilian. The masked intruder tilted his head slightly, almost amused, then pointed the gun at a toddler. The captain froze. Everyone froze. The toddler's mother screamed, shaking uncontrollably. No, please take me, not him, please. The masked intruder didn't react. He simply said, Open the cockpit. Agent Hale comes with us. The rest live. Passengers stared at Hale with pure terror and betrayal. A man near him shouted, Go with them, we're not dying for you. Another yelled, You brought this to us, it's your fault. Chaos surged again, people screaming, pointing, blaming him. Hale raised his hands, breathing fast. I didn't choose this flight, I didn't know they'd. But no one listened. The captain shook his head. I'm not handing anyone over without knowing what you are. Hale took a breath and whispered, They're not here to take me alive. The passengers froze. The masked intruder leveled the gun. Last chance. The pounding below began again. More hands. More figures. More intruders climbing up. It was no longer 3. It was many. The flight attendant's voice cracked, barely a whisper. What do we do? Agent Hale finally met the captain's eyes. There's only one option now. Everyone leaned in subconsciously, trembling, praying, waiting for a miracle. Hale whispered. Agent Hale's words hit the cabin like ice. Depressurize the cabin. Every passenger froze. The captain's jaw dropped. Mild depressurization won't knock them out. It'll take out everyone. Hale shook his head. Not if we do it for 9 seconds. No more, no less. Just enough to stun them and force them back into the hold. Marin's voice was barely a whisper. 9 seconds will we survive? Everyone with masks on will, Hale said. Everyone without. They'll black out, but they'll wake up. The pounding under the floor grew louder. More masked intruders climbed into the cabin, crawling through the torn metal like shadows rising from the dark. The leader raised his dart gun. Agent Hale, he said calmly, you are out of time. The captain looked at Hale, then at the terrified passengers, then at the gun pointed at a child. He closed his eyes. Do it. Hale sprang into action. He lunged forward, slamming his fist into the emergency override panel beside the galley. The intruders shouted and rushed toward him. Hale twisted the valve. FWOSH. A violent gust erupted through the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped. Passengers screamed. Wind blasted through the cabin like a hurricane. Loose papers flew. Bags tumbled. The overhead lights flickered wildly. The intruders staggered backward immediately. Their masks weren't sealed. They grabbed their throats, stumbling toward the hole in the floor, disoriented, choking. Hale shouted, "Put your masks in, now." The entire cabin scrambled. Mothers grabbed masks for children. Passengers pulled them on with shaking hands. The captain slammed his own mask over his face and held onto the cockpit handle. The intruders fired blindly, darts whizzing through the air, hitting seats, walls, the ceiling, but their aim collapsed as the pressure dropped. One intruder slipped and fell back through the opening in the floor. Another clawed at the seats, gasping. The leader tried to reach Hale, but Hale kicked him square in the chest, sending him crashing backward into the cargo hold. Marin screamed. "Hale, stop, 7 seconds." He shut the valve. The wind cut off instantly. Silence returned, except for the heavy breathing of 176 terrified passengers. The intruders below screamed in rage, pounding against the underside of the plane, but none could climb back up. The pressure shift had thrown them into disorientation, and the cargo hold door had automatically sealed itself. The captain collapsed into a seat, shaking. Marin sat on the floor sobbing. Passengers clung to each other. Some cried, some prayed, some simply stared in shock. Hale dropped to his knees, exhausted, breathing hard. The captain finally whispered, "Are they gone?" Hale nodded weakly. "For now, they'll be unconscious for at least 20 minutes. The captain stood shakily. "We're landing this aircraft. Emergency descent, nearest airport." Hale handed him the device, the tracker. "Destroy this once we touch down. It's how they followed me." The captain pocketed it. Passengers slowly began to recover. A woman whispered, We're alive." A young man laughed nervously through tears. "We actually survived that." Marin covered her face. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Hale placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were lied to. You were used. Rook didn't want a test. She wanted a hostage situation." Marin whispered, Why are they after you?" Hale finally answered, "Because I'm the only one who knows where Rook is hiding." Passengers gasped softly. The truth landed like a final cold drop in an already frozen cabin. The captain entered the cockpit and activated emergency protocols. The plane descended fast, safely, toward the nearest airfield. For the first time in over 40 minutes. There was hope. As emergency trucks lined the runway below, Hale looked out the small oval window, breathing in relief. The nightmare was almost over. But as the wheels touched down, as the passengers cheered, as Hale finally allowed himself to exhale, a tiny light blinked on the tracker he just handed over to the captain. A symbol appeared, a Rook chess piece, and a voice crackled through the device's speaker. "Nice try, Agent Hale. See you on the ground." Hale's blood ran cold. The story wasn't over. Not even close. "Depressurize the cabin."